So I'm here today with Saran James-Vaughan. I'm so excited for everyone to meet Saran. Saran's one of those sticky people. I call you sticky. It's like we met 2.5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. And like it's a feeling that stays. It's such an amazing connection speaking with you. So I'm so happy to actually share you with the world, share you with our space, our people, and talk about what you do best. So Saran is a holistic nutritionist, but focuses specifically, mostly in the menstrual wellness space. And I have learned that the word is wellness, not health, for many reasons. So I'd love to go there. I'd love to talk a bit about your journey and what brought you to this space, how you found yourself here.
Absolutely. So it's a little bit of a twisty-turny journey.
Okay.
So I was actually born in Jamaica and always been like a big dreamer. I know you probably heard that from our mutual friend many times, right? But like truly always kind of in my imaginative space. And so going to school, going through it, and I was like, I want to do something really different. I want to go have an adventure. I want to go to university in Canada. And I remember
I would not have left the heat, but okay, here we are.
My parents were like, why? You don't have any family there. You don't know anyone. And I just was like, well, I feel like this is what I need to do. And I'm a pretty determined person. So I did all the things, applied to universities and did all the research and everything. And I just came back with the acceptance letters. I'm like, okay, I have to pick one. And so I got into 3 or 4 universities here, and I chose Ryerson just because it was in the city, and it just felt like it would be, an amazing experience to kind of like learn about this new place, and also I didn't have to share a room.
Yeah, that one box check.
My own space. So coming here and just having this really different experience from living in Jamaica, right? The food is different, the weather is different. I remember seeing snow for the first time and I was like, oh my God, and then not dressing well for it. And so my body just kind of went haywire a little bit, right? Not just in terms of my emotional well-being, but being homesick and being away from family and friends and all of that. But like, I was not really adjusting well to like having a plethora of everything to eat that I never ate before. And so I really kind of struggled both with my mental health and with my physical health, right? Just that adjustment. So fast forward, got through university, actually studied hospitality and tourism, so business and commerce degree, and then went straight into food service, and then just kind of having this experience of how do people eat, like when they're busy.
Oh my God,
when they're just like crunched for time, like the amount of coffee everybody drinks, like all of these things, right? So getting into it and really kind of observing and having the opportunity to work in corporate food services and then working with clients like American Express and seeing and helping them to design their new sort of menu that was more holistic, like giving more nutrition and more focused on healthy foods and giving more options. And I really loved that. And so I spent quite a few years in corporate food service and then had all my babies. And then
How many babies?
I have 3. Wow. They're not babies anymore. But once I got to my 3rd kid, I was like, okay, I have to make some changes here because number one, I was really in a high-paced, high-stress environment, and was really feeling the effects of it on my body, and also wanting to have more balance, being able to be with my children, and working 14 hours a day. I remember being pregnant with my last one, and it was like I wasn't even pregnant. I was just working. And so I decided, like, I love the menu design and like looking at nutrition and all of this. And I also love interacting with people and So after I had my baby, I was like, okay, I'm going back to school. So I embarked on this journey that just, when I say it just went in like all the directions. So you start with nutrition, but then you start learning about herbs. And then I started doing herbal courses and then really sort of integrating all of that into my own life and my own body and practice and noticing the ways in which my body was changing. And also my cycle changing as well and being more like normal.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was possible, like no cramps, no heavy bleeding, just like really starting to get into this space of learning to get in touch with my body. That was the biggest thing I got from my experience with school and all of these things. It's like, what is your body telling you? Okay, what is your body reacting to?
It's like wild that we just don't do that, right?
Absolutely.
We don't even sit and ask what's happening. And we don't even just the stigma around like a menstruating period, it needs to shift. And I think, the work that you're doing is shining light on that. So it's interesting. I'd love to go into sort of more specifics about this, I don't want to say idea because I don't mean to be disrespectful, but how would I say it? This truth around the power of menstruation.
Yes.
Because for me, I'm not feeling so powerful when I'm menstruating. I am feeling like I need a nap.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
So one of the things I started to do, so I know, shifting my diet really kind of impacted my menstrual cycle. So I started to go a little bit deeper and I started to journal around my cycle with the moon. Where is the moon aligned at the time? Like, what am I feeling? What did I eat? What did I, who was coming into my energy space? Like, I just wrote every detail down since 2017. I have
That's some data right there.
There's so much data, right?
Yeah.
And you realize that there are actually patterns. There's energetic patterns, like on a monthly basis, but also like in a year, in over many years, certain themes that come up. And so I started the process of integrating it's not just nutrition that impacts the cycle. It's like all of the things that you're doing, how you're managing your energy resources. So there's this idea that we need to have consistent energy all throughout our cycle. And that's just not the case. We actually feel that, right?
Yeah.
We actually, you just said, right, you don't feel so powerful when you're, kind of low energy and things like that. But there's this idea like, I need to keep going. I need to keep pushing through. And I really challenged myself and in my work with lots of women to challenge the notion that you have to push through. I said, what if you stop? What if you slow down? What if you shift the way that you think about your cycle as a tool or a blueprint for expansion in your life, right? And what does that look like?
So, and what does that feel like? Tell me, enlighten me.
Okay, so we're gonna think about ourselves as dynamic, cyclical beings. So our energy in the first half of our cycle is higher, right? Around ovulation, you feel like you're on top of the world. You can do all the things. You feel energized. But then a week later, after the big show, you probably feel not so great.
I don't even think that I'm aware enough to know that there would be a height in the. I get some work to do, but I don't know that I would notice that pattern. But I guess if I really think about it, yes. It is there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's how disconnected I am from, I'm 40. I still don't know when I'm getting my period. It could be tomorrow.
Wow. So, whereas for me...
She says that without any judgment.
Whereas for me, I can pinpoint to the minute almost when I'm ovulating.
Really?
But I've been studying my cycle and everything in such great
Since 2017.
Since 2017. So I don't use apps or anything to track. I just know in my body.
You're just so connected to it.
Absolutely. And that's been a big part of my work is, having women and menstruating people really connect in such a deep way that you can understand the nuances of your cycle and plan your life around it. So your inner world starts to match. Once you start to get that inner alignment, your world starts to match that. So oftentimes we're in reaction mode to all the things happening around us.
Yeah.
Whereas with your cycle, you have the opportunity to center and ground, and then witness your world change around you.
And this is the difference between the wellness and the health piece.
Yes.
That's where because I mean, Western medicine, there's literally no solution. I have friends with PCOS and really, and they're not even heard. There's no listening to this as an issue. So it's almost like regaining the power of your own body.
And it's sort of like just understanding the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we didn't even have a really good early introduction to our menstrual cycles, and that impacts our relationship with our bodies, our sense of self, and can really create a lot of delays in terms of figuring out when something is not right.
Right, and that's where that reactive piece comes in that you're talking about. It's always just like now I have this, or my cramps are feeling, or I'm low iron, or I'm all these things, and it's a reactionary piece.
Absolutely.
So maybe can you speak a bit more about the proactive element? Like what's the work we're doing? What do we need to do?
Well, first of all, just having baseline awareness of like, what is a day one? When does it
noted?
when is day one? It's surprise. It might sound a little bit like, of course I know what day one is, but some people don't actually count their cycle properly. They count day one as the last day of their bleeding. It's not. Your day one is the first day. So that's day one. Understanding basic things like the quality of your menstruation is dependent on your ovulation. The quality of your...
Wait. Say it again.
So the quality of your menstruation, your actual period, is dependent on your ovulation. So what happens at ovulation impacts your actual period. And your ovulation is impacted by what you did 3 months ago, because it takes 3 months for a follicle to actually fully mature. So that's sort of like the sciencey bit, right? So how you're eating, your stress levels, all of those things 3 months ago is impacting your cycle this month, right? And so sometimes it does take that long. Typically, if I work with clients, it has to be a 3-month minimum if you want to actually see results of consistent changes in all areas of life. So not just like, I'm changing my diet. It's like, what is your sense of self? How are you approaching your well-being as a whole, your mental health, your stress levels, your purpose? Because a big part of your menstrual cycle is tied to the expansion and unfolding of your life purpose.
Whoa, I love this. This is so good. Okay, so I don't know, I have like 7,000 questions right now. You said the quality of your menstrual cycle. Yes. I actually have no idea what you mean by that.
So like, meaning if you have like cramps, severe cramps, if you have like heavy bleeding, if you have a lot of like PMS symptoms, right?
Okay.
Or if you don't have a cycle, if you don't bleed at all, that means you didn't ovulate, right?
Right.
So making sure that ovulation is good is going to impact whether or not you have a period at all and the length of it and all of that.
Okay. So I love this conversation. Okay, so I really want to get into this idea of the power of menstruation. I know we've touched on the power, I think, being understanding it, but also you've mentioned connection to like moon cycles. This is where you need to like Saran me, because I love these conversations. I'm so not woo-woo. But every time I talk to you, I'm like, I want to do all of this stuff. I want to learn everything. So maybe we can talk about, I think maybe you could take it from here. Yeah. I don't really even know how to say it.
So we have 13 cycles on average a year.
Okay.
And we have just as many lunations. So if you look at the phases of the moon, it's quite aligned with the phases of the cycle. So you have your some women, menstruating people, either bleed with the full moon or the new moon. So I like to think of look at the moon like a battery. So the new moon, if you're bleeding at that time, your energy levels might be lower, right? And then like full moon, your battery is full. So that's one kind of like visual to kind of think about it. But the 28 days on average of a menstrual cycle is aligned with the lunar cycle as well.
Oh, so this ain't woo-woo. This is like real deal stuff.
Yeah,
I believe
for sure.
you.
Right?
This is like actual stuff. It's just not Western. It's real stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So when you start to think about it, which is what I mentioned to you before, I write down in my note-taking, my data collection, what phase of the moon it is.
Okay.
Right? Because then my energy might be slightly different. If I'm bleeding, for example, at a full moon, I might have a little bit more energy than I would at a new moon bleed, right? Mm-hmm. So making these little connection and observance is really important. Also, I like to write down the sign.
Okay.
So if the moon is in Gemini, I will be oh, I've had 4 cycles with the moon in Gemini. What does that mean? Am I more communicative? Am I more interested in connecting with my network, for example? Or if it's a moon in Cancer, I'll be wanting to be more at home and nurturing and that kind of energy. It does really, you can see all of these different connections when you put it all together.
I love this. It makes all of the stigma, the gross, the shame, the guilt, the everything just go away when you think about it in this light.
Absolutely. It's such an empowering way to think of it, because we often think, oh, it's a nuisance, I hate this. Yes. But now, you can get to the point where you can actually okay, I'm going to look at my calendar and say, this is the type of work I'm going to do at this phase of my cycle. I'm not talking to anybody at this phase, so I'm not booking any calls. Or, you can say, hey, I want to do a photo shoot when I'm ovulating, because actually your face changes. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So your skin,
everything, your breasts change, everything. You smell different. Yeah.
All of that. Yeah. So that's the perfect time to book that photo shoot and do all the things, ask for a raise, all of those things, because you're kind of magnetic at that time, right? And then, in that premenstrual phase, maybe doing more analytical work or self-reflective work or things that are more detail-oriented, where you need more of a critical eye. So instead of turning the critical eye inward, you can turn it outward and say, hey, I need to go over my finances maybe. Mm-hmm. Using the energy of your cycle in a way that helps to support your well-being and your life in general.
So good. I want to talk about something that you said when we were doing the pre-chat for this. And it was that, society's built on the 9 to 5 for the testosterone for that cycle, but women actually work on a 2-week.
Yes.
I need more. I need to know. Can you start from the beginning and go through that?
Right. So typically testosterone levels are highest for men in the morning and lower in the evening. Whereas for us, we have a 4-week cycle, so 2 weeks on, as I mentioned, 2 weeks on. So it's a wave. It's like a wave. Your hormones are at their lowest levels on day 1 of your cycle, and then they gradually go up and peak around ovulation, and then they start the downward trend as well. And then, so for men, they work. First thing in the morning, you're up, you're ready to go. It actually matches their cycle, whereas we have a little bit more, dynamic way, right? So we're not as linear; it's more cyclical. So if you think about that from the perspective of your work, saying, okay, what can I do in that first 2 weeks? That is more outward expression, so that your energy is more outward, up and out. And the last 2 weeks are more in and down, right? So think of it the same way as the seasons. spring and summer are more up and out energy. So that corresponds to like the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, and then fall and winter are more inward and, think about what you want to do in the fall and winter. It's not super active. And then, so thinking of the luteal phase and the menstrual phase in that way.
So can you say more about the seasons? Because we did. I want to know more about this. I think it's like a really unique Saranism.
Yes. So I like to. I think it's a really great way to just understand, because yes, I can use all of the biological terms, but if you think about it from a seasonal perspective, it kind of puts it into perspective, right? So if you think about the beginning, so just after your cycle ends, up until ovulation, like how do you feel? You feel like this kind of like growing momentum. And if you think about spring, the energy of spring, everything is just kind of waking up, coming back to life. Things are coming up and out of the earth. It's very fresh. So even in designing my course, I looked at like what are the foods that are best in the spring, and they really actually support that phase of the cycle. So sprouts and like really fresh greens and fiddlehead ferns. If you think about all of those really kind of new energy, and that clearing energy as well, because you're clearing the energy of winter, that's going to support that phase of the cycle. So I use that to kind of make these connections, so it makes it easier. Like, oh, what would I naturally reach for? Right? What would I naturally do? And even in terms of work and like career and, even as a business owner, initiating things. So spring starts in Aries season, which is this fire, like first spark. So if you're wanting to launch something, if you want to start a conversation around something, that's the time to do it.
Well, look at us right here doing this in the spring.
Exactly. The perfect energy. So.
Good. So how about you walk me through maybe what a client experience might look like? What does the assessment look like? What's the journey you're taking them on? I know courses are a big thing for you. So maybe you can speak to the one-on-one versus a course, some of the things you're working on, just so we can, tell people what you're doing and where to find you.
Right. So with the one-on-one, it's definitely a deep dive. I'm a Scorpio, so you're going to go to the depths. You got to be ready. Because I'm going to take you there. But it's everything.
That's the sticky piece. It's not sticky, it's the Scorpio.
It's the Scorpio.
It's the sting.
You're going to meet yourself in a way that you have to be ready.
But literally every conversation I have with you, I'm like, she sees things that I don't know about me.
I'm ready to take folks there. So you really actually have to be ready for that. But it's everything. I'm looking at your diet with a really critical eye. We're doing like all the assessments, all that kind of foundational stuff. We're also looking at how you process emotions, how you connect to your body, how you manage stress, what are some of your routines. And then depending on the client, I do medical astrology as well. So looking at your potential areas of weakness based on your birth chart. Sometimes I do tarot as well, integrating that. But really it is a holistic approach. It's not just the diet, it's all of these layers. And it can be a very daunting process if it's something that you've never really truly experienced before, or you've never really connected with yourself in that way, because there's a lot of shadow things that will come up inevitably. Because one thing about the premenstrual phase, it's going to show you your work, right? So if you notice the inner narrative that comes up during your premenstrual phase, that is telling you a lot about what is in your subconscious mind. So we go through all of this kind of like foundational understanding and kind of going into the depths of it. That is one-on-one. With the courses, similar, but it's like recordings and like suggestions. There's recipe guides, there's herbal guides, because I like to integrate a lot of traditional wisdom and herbal medicine as well, and not just thinking of herbs in the way that we think about drugs that we get from, the pharmacy. It's around your energy as well. So every plant has the capacity to inform us or to impart their wisdom to us. It's impacting you on the physiological level, but also on the psycho-spiritual level. So really creating the space for understanding that and learning how that plant is interacting with you. So that is all in the course as well. And then there's that kind of piece of like having the conversations live in a community group as well that we have available.
Wow, that sounds amazing. You mentioned that you have some smaller, maybe that sounds like a one-on-one in-depth, maybe more, or is it in a cohort? Like, do you have a group?
So one-on-one in-depth is like if you want coaching with just me. But the course is a 4-week guided course. So you have all of the content, video recordings, recipe guides, worksheets, all of it. And there's even like a bonus section just on the menstrual cycle and the moon and tarot, how to integrate. So I have tarot spreads for the different phases of the cycle.
Wow.
Journal prompts and questions to ask with the tarot. So that's the big sort of course. But we're always having conversations in our community group around menstrual health and all the things that are kind of stem from that. So how it impacts mental health, the disease processes and like how to support the body naturally, all of that.
So maybe I can actually pick up for that, just to connect it to North, because I think looking at our business, we're basically creating space to look at whole person care in approaching skin. And you can't look at skin health without recognizing the menstrual cycle. It's just, they're not separated at all. We have a lot of women coming in later in life or post-pregnancy with hormonal cystic acne or PIH, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is a big one in our space. I think, a lot of the work that we do is surface correction, but also understanding that and knowing that there's more to it. And we have a clientele of all different skin tones and types, and knowing that each skin tone and type has to have a different treatment method. But if we look at the inside menstrual connection, there has to be some work for skin. You have to have clients with skin issues. So, knowing that we're a referral source to people who can help much more than maybe we can, and that it's not just cosmetic, that it is a whole person piece. What are some of the issues that you're seeing as commonplace in your practice in skin health?
Absolutely. So the biggest one is like cystic acne, especially if someone has polycystic ovarian syndrome. You often see that as a major.
It runs down
issue.
onto the neck too, yeah.
Absolutely.
It comes down and it's even back as well.
Yes, and sometimes even the chest.
Yeah.
Even the chest at times. So that's a big one that causes, like the skin, it's sort of the window into your inner world, actually. And so one of the things that is really important to address is diet and making sure that the detoxification processes, organs are working at their optimal, right? So liver, lungs, the bowels, nutrition can really support that quite well. So that's something that I really focus a lot on. If there are issues on the skin, we're looking at digestive health with a very, very critical eye. Is there leaky gut happening?
The gut tells it all, right? It's the brain and gut.
Yes. So that's a really important piece of it for clients who have PCOS especially.
And so we spoke briefly about, in another conversation, about post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And I think as like a medical spa that really focuses on bringing in machines and equipment that treat all skin types. PIH is really tough to crack. It's not just surface skin. There's a lot more going on underneath. How are you approaching, and also you mentioned hair growth, which is something that we don't see too much in our space. Now that you've said it though, I bet you everyone's gonna come in with this. But I'd love to understand a bit more about, it's hormones. That's what PIH is, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
What are we doing? What are we doing? How is that connected to, is it menstrual health or diet? Or?
So all of that is, again, hormone levels. So one of the things that I really do encourage women menstruating people to do is, yes, look at your cycle with a more critical eye, but really ask your primary care physician when you're doing blood work to look at your hormone panel to see if there's any imbalances there. You can often tell if there's estrogen dominance or low progesterone levels, all of these things that actually impact the skin. If there's an imbalance there, then you're going to see more of these issues coming up. I wanted to actually go back a little bit to the hair growth.
Yeah. No, I'm interested. I think now that I've said it out loud, it's just one of the, it's spring.
Yeah. Because again, that's also tied to PCOS, and it's something that can cause folks to be really self-conscious. And so when you're constantly going in and like waxing, so waxing is often the method that's used, it can be quite irritating to the skin. And then that causes scarring, and then that causes like all these
it just busts the skin wide open for
Absolutely.
trauma, right? That's especially in the lower half of the face where you're not, you're sun exposed, you're not protecting in the same way. Yeah,
absolutely. So that when that happens, it's like, is there anything that you can do from the inside, right? So there's the sort of cosmetic things that you can do, but again, really looking at healing foods and looking at those essential oils, essential fats, so essential fatty acids, vitamin E. Again, this is why taking a critical look at the diet is super important when there's skin issues.
Yeah, and we don't pretend to be that. We just very much support it and know it. So yes. We did have a holistic nutritionist on staff for a while, and we refer, but there is still a disconnect because we're medical and because the industry is like typically pretty gross and they're perpetuating a message that we don't really follow. It's tough to sort of say, come in, we're medical, we do chemical pills, we do this, and talk about diet and hormones and the menstrual cycle and the connection. It's just people are coming and looking for a quick fix.
That's it.
And it's not it. It's not quick. And it's especially with skin types 3, 4, 5, 6, Asian skin, East Indian skin, black skin, it's slow. It's not a one and done. It takes time. We have to be really careful. So we're aware of all of this, and we are really very much focused on referring. So
I think that's I do this a lot with trying to explain things. From a holistic approach and then like the medical approach. So similar with skin, there's always it's an iceberg, right? So above the surface, you're going to see cystic acne and all these different things. But what's happening below the surface, you have to actually address both,
yes.
right? So there are things that you can do that are going to help to minimize and help that process.
Yes.
But the healing that has to happen comes from inside also. So it can actually take longer if you're only doing it cosmetically, but if you're doing both, it can actually enhance what you're doing cosmetically.
Yeah. Good. Well, we'll just send everybody your way. Open your calendar. Yeah. Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share with us that you're working on, or a course, a talk, anything that you want our audience to know about? Yeah,
so right now I'm actually really focused on building awareness because I realize that that's one of the things, the foundation is sort of missing, and it's hard to build on all these other ideas without that foundation there. So I work with youth. We are currently working on a program for holistic menstrual health program for Black youth in South Africa and in Ghana. So we're partnering with A Million Girls Foundation there. So we're in the process of doing that. But we want to invite community in to start conversations around menstruation. So we do have a community group. And from there, you can learn about the other programs that we're doing, the other causes that we're supporting, and all of the awareness that we're building. We're building something that is not just for the individual, but for the collective. Because when we heal individually, it impacts the collective. And when the collective heals, then the world changes, right? And sometimes I have all these big ideas about changing the world.
But you're doing it one period at a time.
One period at a time. One cycle at a time.
I love this.
So really inviting folks into the community to ask the questions, to have the conversations, to start those conversations, because especially for Black women, women of color, we tend to wait really long before we seek help or support or treatment. For example, with fibroids, it takes like 2.5 years before women, menstruating people, actually seek help.
Wow, and there's
and
so
3 years
painful.
before even a diagnosis.
Wow, and I mean, I know I can't be specific with statistics, but I know that Western medicine is not always the safest space for women of color and Black women. So I can imagine that diagnosis is so layered and so hard. So I love the program. I think that we can definitely link and share, and if there's other ways of supporting, then we're all in.
Absolutely. And I guess the last thing I would really want to say is that, like, if you're feeling something is wrong or something is off, and you go to a practitioner and they're dismissive of that, don't take that as the final answer, because you know your body. Sometimes it takes multiple opinions to come to a conclusion about what's really happening. And don't be afraid to expand your treatment team, right? So sometimes we just say, okay, I'm going to my medical doctor, which is really critical, very important goal, because you need to do your blood work and you need to do the ultrasounds, whatever it is. But you also need to look at, again, diet and nutrition. Do you have therapy, for example? So if you are a woman of color and you have fibroids, there's often an underlying intergenerational trauma issue, mental health challenges there. So are you seeking the therapy? Do you have support of community? Who are you speaking to? These are all very critical pieces of it. So think of yourself in a more dynamic way, and that you are not alone. Half of the population is experiencing the things that you're experiencing. So it's important to have those conversations.
I think that is a beautiful way to put a big bow on this conversation. It's been a gift speaking with you. I'm so glad that you've joined this conversation, and I hope that we can shout loud for you and continue to support what you're doing, because it's so important.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda, the Leo goddess queen. That's what sticks in my head when I think about you. I'm like, the Leo goddess.
Well, yeah. I try. Thanks, Saran. We'll chat with you soon.
Thank you.
Get to know us more by visiting northmedicalspa.com. Thanks for listening to The Elixir. We hope you feel great today.